Welcome to today's presentation regarding the current threat to the federal system of America. The federal system of America is comprised of the federal Constitution, U.S. Constitution, the compound republics, which is made up of 50 states, which are 50 republics with their own constitutions as backups, and the American Federation. Another day, another episode with Bill Jones from Freedom's Nest. And today is episode number 5, presentation. And what it's about, I'll give you the title and then we'll go into it really deep. Communists say, no justice, no peace. And freemen say, no peace, no justice. Yes, they are opposites. They are opposites. But that's what you have when you have class warfare, and that's what we have in this country. And there's currently a communist insurrection. The American insurrection that we presently have is a communist insurrection. By communist, pro-communist, communist sympathizers, what they have called in the past useful idiots. I don't like that term that much. People have been brainwashed. It's not because they're idiots, it's because they're brainwashed. Maybe we should just say useful brainwashed citizens. Now, they're opposites. Going back again to Ferguson, Missouri, and the situation down there. And that's what you hear. You hear that one side there. The communists or the people, the quote demonstrators, by the way, who are not very peaceful. Most of the peaceful ones aren't out there anymore. Weren't out there after the initial thing. Because I may imagine they were offended by those who supposedly demonstrating and acting the way they were. But there's two sides. There's the criminal side and there's the free citizens class. Part of the free citizens class are police officers, law enforcement, people who have taken oaths to protect society from criminals. We'll have to find out in the final analysis from what I see generally and what we've heard. Some of the YouTube ones I've seen initially, and I was looking at one last night, and Mr. Brown's body, he's laying there dead on the street. And I heard all this stuff in the background, the people taking it. This cop was guilty. They shot him for no reason. I mean, the guy hasn't even been covered with a sheet yet. An EMT or EMS personnel came up there. He didn't even do anything. He knew that man was dead already. And we know from reports that we've got on it from the coroner's office that he was shot in the head and forehead. And if that's the case, I used to be a volunteer fireman. I know what that means. You have somebody and you can see and tell that they're dead on the spot. They leave them there until a coroner, representative, or nowadays they call them medical examiners a lot of places, until they come out and they look, because you have a crime scene then, and you have to investigate and see what happened, how he died. Police automatically, a police officer discharges his weapon, there's automatically an investigation on why there was a discharge, how there was a discharge, whether there was an accident, was it a fight over a gun, was someone defending themselves, or someone did something wrong, a police officer did something wrong. But you only get that from investigation. Sometimes it takes several weeks. With a case here in Illinois, a police officer shot an old man, old World War II vet, 95 years old, shot him with a beanbag in a nursing home. Killed him. He probably will go to jail because he responded with a lethal action against a non-lethal threat. Now the situation down in Ferguson, we don't know yet. We're going to hear it. Indications to me are the police officer was just doing his job, and I'm going to get into that. I say, communists say no justice, no peace. And freemen say no peace, no justice. And there's a reason for that. Police officers who are also, you hear the word cops or cop, that stands for conserver of peace. You see the slide on there. And you see that, conserver of peace. It's an old English reference. English law, English common law. The old days, they used to be called wardens of peace also, my understanding. And in the United States, the U.S. legal system, a conservator of the peace is synonymous with peace officer, a police officer, a coroner, or a court officer may be considered a conservator of police. Conservator of police, of peace, a peace officer. Now you have the communists, they'll say on one side they're no justice, no peace. Of course that justice, from their point of view, is communist justice, Marxist justice. And if you study it, I'm going to tell you all about it, because I'm going to have every episode I have is going to be about communism. Maybe talking about the Bible, maybe talking about our Constitution, our federal system. But the opposite side is communism. Now when I say, Freemen say, no peace, no justice, first of all, the peace officers on the street. The justice part under the American system, the justice part is the court system. That's the stuff that's happening in the court. That's the stuff you're seeing now with investigation. That's on the legal side, and in the legal area, that compartment, which is the justice, the judges, the trials. But what happens on the street is not justice. Some places it's called street justice. Some places when you have gangs and they're shooting each other, that's street justice. One gang against another gang. And you also have street justice by some people who incite riots, who cause violence, and do not have the proper peaceful assembly. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about that. In 1970, Illinois, I had just come back from Vietnam, out of the Navy, and within a few months, while I was gone, they had a constitutional convention. They came out with the 4th Illinois Constitution. In the spring of 1970, they had an election to ratify the new Constitution of the United States. And the constitutions of the individual states, the republics of the states, they're different, their wording is different, but in the Bill of Rights and the preamble, what the contents are, those are the basic human rights for all over the United States and in the federal Constitution. Now, you're going to say, well, it says different things. No, the general idea is they're the basic human rights, American human rights. And you have it right in front of you on the screen here, and I'm going to read it. The preamble from 1970, 4th Constitution of the Illinois, State of Illinois, the Republic of Illinois. We, the people of the State of Illinois, grateful to Almighty God for the civil, political, and religious liberty which he has permitted us to enjoy, and seeking his blessing upon our endeavors, in order to provide for health, safety, and welfare of the people, maintain a representative and orderly government, eliminate poverty and inequity, assure legal, social, and economic justice, provide opportunity for the fullest development of the individual, and secure the blessings of freedom and liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the state of Illinois. You could replace that state of Illinois with any state, because that's a basic. So that's mostly what you see there in the federal. If you were to update it, you'd probably have something like this. But you notice about development of the individual. You see, this is where the problem is with communism. Communism is all about class struggle, class warfare. And on that side, it's criminal. Been through this. I'm going to continue to be through this. Then you get into the Bill of Rights, state of Illinois, and I'm going to go through some of those because they're directly related. They're basic human rights, American human rights for everybody in this country, including Mr. Brown. However, Mr. Brown was on the wrong side of justice and the wrong side of peace. And we have video proof of that, don't we? Section 1 talks about inherent and inalienable rights. You know about that. You've heard about them in the federal Constitution. Why do we have them also in the state constitutions in the Republic of the States? Because they are backups for oppression at the federal level, such as you're seeing today. All men are by nature free and independent, and have certain inherent and inalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Is to secure these rights and the protection of property, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. I accentuated the word property because, as I have in previous episodes, talked about the Communist Confession of Faith. Primary goal of the Communist Manifesto, which is where the Communist Confession of Faith is located, their primary goal is the elimination of private property. Okay? That's your opposites. Section 2. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor be denied the equal protection of the law, equal protection of the law, equal protection of the law, equal protection of the law. Okay? Equal protection of the law, property. So when someone goes into a convenience store, reaches behind the counter, and takes the private property of another individual, he is denying that individual, that store owner, his basic American constitutional rights to private property. I don't care what the thief thinks. He's violating the law. He's doing an immoral act, and we'll get into that too. Section 3, religious freedom. The free exercise and employment of, enjoyment of religious profession and worship without discrimination shall forever be guaranteed, and no person shall be denied any civil or political right, privilege, or capacity on account of his religious opinions. But the liberty of conscience hereby secured shall not be construed to dispense with oaths or affirmations, excuse acts of licenses, or justify practice inconsistent with peace or safety of the state. What happened down in Missouri? People say, "Oh, freedom of speech." No, freedom of speech is not covered by non-peaceful acts, and that's what occurs. whatever you do, compare Selma, Alabama in the 60s and that demonstration, that peaceful demonstration, with what has occurred in Ferguson. One is peaceful and one is not. They crossed the bounds in Ferguson, and why they crossed the bounds is what I've been talking about, is the insurrection. Insurrections aren't peaceful. The safety of individuals, people of color being enslaved in Ferguson by people who are hell-bent that are not having a peaceful demonstration. Illinois does not have a freedom of press statute. It's covered under speech. All persons may speak, write, and publish freely, being responsible for the abuse of that liberty. In trials for libel, both civil and criminal, the truth, when published, with good motives and for justifiable ends, shall be sufficient defense. Now, here we go. You're responsible for abuse. So if you come into town, like Ferguson, and you're an outsider, and you come in and you're telling people, making them yell and shout and say things that aren't very good and incite them, that is abuse of your right to free speech. There are limitations, and these are some of the limitations. There are also free speech, getting to the federal level, where insurrection, by the way, is mentioned. Title 18, USC, Chapter 115, treason, sedition, and subversive activities. Inciting mob action is subversive activities. Now, the next thing is the right to assemble and petition. Section 5. The people have the right to assemble in a peaceable manner, to consult for the common good, to make known their opinions of their representatives, and to apply for redress of grievances. And here we go. That's just like the feds. They have less words up there in the First Amendment, but you have a right to peacefully assemble. There is a limitation. The point at which you stop being peaceful is where you have a problem. The counter demonstrations down in the South in the 60s, and I'm old enough to remember that stuff. There's also a Supreme Court case, Edwards versus South Carolina, just sitting at the counter. That was peaceful assembly. They didn't say a word. That's freedom of speech. That's how they ruled it. They ruled in favor of the First Amendment and all that, and those people, they weren't even marching. They were just standing, or sitting, I should say, at the counter of the 5 and 10 or whatever it was, that store. Kresge's it might have been, the old days. But there they were. That was their right. That is a peaceful demonstration. But no, you have some people yelling, shouting, and what have you. Then searches and seizures. You have a right to be secure in your person, houses, and papers, and other possessions against unreasonable searches. So there's people, law-abiding citizens, they're not secure in their person when they got gangsters coming in from out of town causing problems. Then they get involved in indictments, and down there in the one thing in Illinois one, which is interesting, I don't know whether Missouri has this or not, but to have a indictment, they also you could replace it with a prompt preliminary hearing, or should have for probable cause. I view this thing as this: an investigation should have been held. It's early. It's early to determine probable cause. As I said in the previous episode, and I'll say right now again, I look at that, that peace officer was doing his job. And you need to come up with some evidence to definitively relate to the fact that he was not doing his job. And with that, we'll have another episode soon and talk about this. Again, I'm getting up on about the 20-minute level, and I don't like to go too far. But remember the peace officers in our country. In today's society, with the threats against them and their peace and their rights and their life, maybe we should have a little prayer for them and their service that they provide for the society.